Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today with us. Today's meeting will be hosted by me, and we have today our guest will be Dr. Kelly. So Kelly, she is the head of the IAU Office of Astronomy of Outreach in the IAU. And today we're gonna talk about the role of women and girls in astronomy and generally in science. So a short review about Kelly. I have known fact Kelly for a few years. I met her the first time in South Korea, and then I think we met another again within with the IAU activity. So Kelly, basically, she's astrophysicist and she's science communicator who had the fortune of living and working with many countries across the United States and worldwide. So this experience have shaped Kelly's perspective in the importance of astronomy communication in building STEAM opportunity for under-resourced people worldwide and its role in science generally. I'm so blessed today to have Kelly with us today to talk about female and girls in astronomy all over the world, especially that she is the correct person for such a topic. She have been working with Office for Astronomy of Outreach of the IAU for almost 3 years, in which she was very closer to the NOC and many nations all over the world, working together to support outreach activity and also support underrepresented people, our community, and also helping female and girls to move on with their outreach activity also and sensitize people about the importance of science and particularly astronomy, not only in the development of our country but also in the development basically of science of education. I'm so glad to have you, Kelly, today here with us. So please go ahead, and the floor is yours. I'm asking everyone please to mute their microphone. If they have questions, they can drop it in the chat or raise their hand and ask them directly to Kelly. Alternatively, you can have a Q&A session at the end of the session. So Kelly, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Mayssa. It's really great to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I love that you do this program, and I love that I have this opportunity to talk about this topic. I think I'm going to approach it from a slightly different perspective, or maybe not. Maybe this is precisely what you wanted me to do, but we'll find out. And so I'm really, really excited to talk to you guys today about maybe not the role of women and girls in astronomy, but kind of the status of women and girls in astronomy and science in particular, in general, I should say. So as Mayssa said, I'm Kelly Blumentha. I'm the director of the Office for Astronomy Outreach, which is a joint project of the International Astronomical Union and the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan, which is based in Tokyo, which is where I'm talking to you from today, right now. I can get started here. Let's see. Everybody can see my screen. Is that right? Okay, great. So wonderful. So, we start out these kinds of things with this question, and I think we're all kind of primed at this point to kind of come up with the quote unquote correct answer. But, who do you think of when you think of the word scientist? Who is what's the image that pops into your mind? I think more and more this answer is changing, but for a very long time, the answer might have been someone like this, Galileo Galilei, who lived many centuries ago, did some amazing work, set the groundwork for a lot of modern astronomy. But the image is an old, white, kind of gruffy looking man. Maybe another person you might think of would be Albert Einstein, much more recent, also old, white, very gruffy looking man. Brilliant, of course, kind of set the stage for modern physics, and so much in what we do in physics and in everyday life and society is kind of dictated by the work of Albert Einstein. But some people that maybe you don't think of, and this is worth giving some consideration. Maybe Chikai Mukai. who was the first Japanese astronaut in space. Something maybe you don't think of when you think of a scientist, maybe someone being an astronaut in the first place, or someone who looks like her, who has had her experiences, or maybe even Miriam Mizukani, who is one of the most brilliant mathematicians to have ever lived. But perhaps many of us don't know her name. And the biggest question there is, why don't we know their names? Why aren't these people as famous as Albert Einstein and Galileo Galilei? Why do we not see them necessarily as, maybe we see them as being scientists once we know who they are, certainly, and we can recognize them and be very proud of them, especially if we identify with them in some way. But why don't we know who they are? Why are their names not part of our vernacular, not part of our everyday kind of discourse around the speech of science? And I think there's 4 things that kind of dictate this. And I'm sure there's more. I'm sure I'm not covering everything, but I'd like to talk about these 4 aspects in my talk today. And they are bias, representation, access, and support. And so I'll talk about each one in turn. And so bias is defined as just an inclination or prejudice against one person or group. And you can kind of think of this as kind of like a stereotype as well. How do you, we opened this with thinking about a stereotype. What is the kind of quintessential scientist that you can think of? That was the question that I asked. And that plays into the biases that we have around who we perceive as being a scientist, who science is for, and what science serves to do. And so how does this bias impact our educational outcomes? And this can lead to some kind of pressure to conform to societal norms. So when you're asking questions like, or making statements like science is for boys and dolls are for girls, but these are biases that are based on societal perceptions that don't necessarily have any basis in reality. Boys can play with dolls if they like dolls. Girls can do science if they like science. And these biases really impact the way that not only that we interact with these, kind of gender norms today in our daily life, but also how we're kind of trained as children to go through the world and kind of grow in that way. And these biases also, it's not just coming from society or our parents to us. Of course, our teachers have their own biases and their own attitudes about who science is for and who could be good at science. And that impacts future success of people who are interested in science, people who don't look like the stereotypical scientist. And these perceptions and their attitudes can impact the access that they provide to learners who are trying to understand STEM careers, understand how they can get more information, get access to more information about astronomy, about STEM in general. It also leads to issues of equitable scoring. So they might perceive one person as being less intelligent than another based on a certain characteristic like gender. And that can impact the way that they perceive academic performance in the classroom, which can then impact that person further down the road in their educational career. And of course, I should also say that these things affect us internally too. There's this thing called stereotype threat, where you understand a negative stereotype about some part of your identity. Maybe it's being a woman or being a girl. You understand that other people think that you're not good at science because you're a girl, and you are, you have so much anxiety and angst about this bias that people have, that it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it snowballs into you kind of fulfilling that stereotype because you have this pressure, this external pressure that's coming on you. So it comes from the outside and also comes from the inside, this bias that can really impact the way that you interact with STEM in general. So how do you counter bias? Of course, there's, education is one of the greatest tools to really fight anything. So widespread advocacy to kind of break out of your bubble. If you have biases about particular groups of people, maybe you should interact with more people that are in that group, and try to learn more about them, try to see the nuances in that group, and not just see them as a monolith, but also as, individuals, as kind of a heterogeneous group of people, just like any other group, just like all the groups that you belong to. And so you seeing yourself as an individual and seeing others as individuals as well, and not necessarily representatives of their group. And of course, having diversity in all of our spaces, particularly in education, informal and formal education, from preschool all the way up to graduate school and academia, when we're professors and doing amazing research. Diversity really will play a huge role in how we perceive problems, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And of course, I say we should start very, very early, and that's very true. And I want to just point out that our NOC for Egypt has done some really incredible work on Equal Day. So Equal Day was the March equinox, and they celebrated this as a way to highlight gender equity. And they brought teachers and students together to learn about astronomy, but also to learn about gender equity and how they could make their educational spaces more equitable. And so you see these students who are working side by side, they're learning, they're both, all genders are learning about gender equity. It's not just talking to the young girls, but also talking to the young boys and saying, this is an important part of your education, is learning how to work with women. And learning that women are an important part of the STEM workforce. And I think this is one of the most fundamental things about educating our youth, and really, educating all the people that are in our lives at every stage of the way, is making sure that the boys and men in our lives have the same understanding of our importance in STEM as we do. Because ultimately, if we want to change institutions, if we want to change minds, we need as many people on our side as possible. And the best way to do that is to start early, and to take opportunities like Equal Day to show that gender equity is an extremely important part of what we need to do as scientists for the field. And so the second piece of this, I think, is representation. And all of this data comes from the UN call to action to close the gender gap in science. And they say that the current status of women in science right now is that women are 1/3 of all scientists in the world. Fewer than 2 out of 5 of all STEM graduates are women. And then fewer than 1 in 8 members of national academies of science are women. And so this is kind of a very grim realization, and shows us that we have a long way to go with respect to getting women in STEM careers, and showing them that these careers are for them. And I say this is all part of representation because the only way, I think one of the things that we've heard quite a bit, or at least I have, is you can't be it if you can't see it. So if there are very few women in the STEM workforce, and that includes academia and in technology and engineering as well. Then how can you know that this is a career path that is viable for you? And so when we're talking about representation, it's so important, again, because you can't be what you can't see. But a lack of representation leads women and girls and other underrepresented groups, it's not just women and girls that are affected by this, to leave STEM because they don't see it as something that they can do, or that's something that's made for them. And the structures that exist within our institutions reinforce that. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done on an institutional level to make sure that women and girls feel like they are supported, and feel like they are well represented within those institutions. One of the things that's really effective at retention keeping girls and women and underrepresented groups in STEM careers is mentoring. That one-on-one or a few on one interactions with people that you can identify with easily are so important when it comes to making sure that you feel welcome in a space. And that also improves self-efficacy, because if you feel welcome, then it's more likely that you're going to feel like you can actually do it. And so representation kind of comprises this really important space of making sure that people feel safe to participate in something like STEM or astronomy, and also giving people the resources to access the information that they need to make sure that they understand what's needed in order to succeed in astronomy and STEM in general. And just if I can put a note out there, the Office for Astronomy Outreach is completely women-led. So I'm the director. Naomi Saber-Frimpong, who's here today in the Zoom room, is our deputy director, and Cynthia Duran, who is maybe watching elsewhere, is our international outreach officer. And so the three of us are working together. We have three very different ways of looking at the world, three very different ways of communicating, but that's such a huge value and such a huge positive thing about our office, is that we're all working together to make science communication, astronomy communication, a more inclusive space. And we're really living and embodying that as an office. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And my hope is that the three of us together serve as good representatives of our community, that we can maybe show young women and girls that this is a possibility for them, because the three of us are doing this together in this very visible, very prestigious role. And that, I think this is an important thing. This is not lost on me. Certainly, I think it's very important that it's the three of us that are working together on this. So the Office for Astronomy Outreach also has a series of themes that occur throughout the year. So inclusive astronomy communication is definitely one of them. Dark and quiet skies, of course, we all care in astronomy about dark and quiet skies, but one of our primary themes is women and girls in astronomy. And what we hope to do with that is to empower women and girls and learners who identify that way all over the world to engage in astronomy, to learn about it, to have access to resources, and to see people in their communities who look like them, who talk like them in their language, do amazing science, and be part of that community. So one of the things that we've been doing this year is our Women of Solar Physics webinar series, because this year, 2025, marks the solar maximum. And so in July, actually, we'll have the peak of solar activity. And so this whole year, starting in March and going to the end of the year, we've been holding a webinar series. So once each month, one woman, amazing woman in solar physics, comes and gives a talk. Our next one is actually next week on the 15th of May at 1 p.m. UTC, if I'm not mistaken. And these are opportunities for people to see the amazing work that women in physics do, and to highlight the work that they do, and to show young girls in countries where they come from, where these researchers come from, that it's possible for them to get to this point, to be highlighted in this way, to be recognized for their work, and to do this really interesting and intricate science that all of these women are a part of. And what we're really doing is giving these women a platform for showcasing their work in a meaningful way. And so this is an ongoing series. I would really encourage you to tune in next week, and also next month. On June 20th is our next one, after the one next week. So they're happening all year. So stay tuned for that. Excuse me. So of course, all of the work that we do with the Office for Astronomy Outreach would be impossible without our National Outreach Coordinator Network, of course, which Mayssa is part. And And I call this a global network with local reach because, all of the resources and materials and opportunities that we provide to the NOCs, to our NOCs network, then get kind of amplified out into their communities. They work with the people that they know, they work with the science communicators in their communities, and it kind of snowballs the material. The way that we can impact more people is by snowballing into these communities and ultimately bringing more opportunities to more people worldwide. And this is particularly important in the context of engaging women and girls, because having those local contacts is so important. Building that trust is so important. And it's really, it might not be meaningful coming from an international institution, but if it comes from your neighbor, then that can make a really big difference. And so that's what, this relationship that we're trying to provide and uphold is to kind of spread the word as widely as possible to impact as many people as possible. And the National Outreach Coordinators are the core of that work. And just to give you a sense of all the things that they do, they really try to engage with as many people as possible. And they do. It's really inspiring to see all of the work that they do. But they do so much that we want to recognize their work. And so for women and girls in astronomy last year, we actually created a playing card game with some of the national outreach coordinators, the women of the NOCs network. We also did a poster series to try and get people to know who the women of the NOCs network were and are, and highlight the work that they do. They're not just science communicators, they're scientists, they're professors, they're students, they're communicators, they're journalists. So there's so much that these women take on so much in their lives, and they do so much for our community. So that our part of what we wanted to do was to give back to them in some way, and give them a little bit of a highlight and a little bit of a platform for showcasing the work and the hard work that they really do to spread this work into their communities. So another way that we can kind of promote representation is by talking about it. So our NOC in Italy this last quarter held an event. It was kind of like a STEM and cinema event. So they played this movie called Hidden Figures, which if you haven't seen it, it's really great. It's about the women who were behind the one of the NASA missions. So they the NOC Italy team did a screening of this movie and then followed it with a Q&A session with a panel of all women talking about the role of women in science. They had about 120 people who were there in attendance, both men and women and everybody in between. And this is a really great way to engage people with the topic of women in astronomy, women in science, women in STEM in general. The media and particularly entertainment is a really great medium to communicate all of this. If you're being entertained at the same time as you're learning something, you're perhaps more likely to actually remember what you're learning. And if you're seeing these really brilliant women being portrayed on the screen, you see their importance and you see how impactful they're being, not only within their communities, but also to the scientific work that they're doing. And so I think doing projects like this is a really interesting and maybe creative way of bringing the community into the conversation about the role of women in science. Is maybe a more familiar way of doing it, of bringing people together. So now, when we're talking about all of these things, representation is great, but you can't have people that will represent you if they don't have access to resources, opportunities, information. So really, who has access to STEM opportunities? Bias and representation can impact the perceptions around who should have access to opportunities in STEM. I mentioned a little earlier when we were talking about biases, maybe teachers could have might have perceptions or attitudes that girls shouldn't, or girls aren't as intelligent as boys maybe, or they shouldn't be as interested in science, and so they won't give them the opportunity to pursue science as a career. They won't give them the information that they might need to pursue that. And I should say it's not only just should have access, but also can have access. There's an issue here that's not just about gender, but also about financial security and socioeconomic class, and leading into sustainable development. So if you don't have access to fundamental resources, how can you possibly have access to science and scientific opportunities, and the resources that you might need to pursue a STEM career? So giving people resources to participate in this, giving women resources to participate in this, improves financial outcomes, economic outcomes for families, and improves ultimately sustainable development worldwide. So there's really no reason why we shouldn't do this, but it's a good question, an interesting question to ask. This should or can have opportunities to people to opportunities in STEM. And of course, this is an issue across the educational career. It's not just at an early stage, but also, when you're in high school, and your teachers see you as being either maybe an arts person or a science person. You can't be both. Or maybe when you're in college or higher education, having access to the kind of career education that you might need might be a really big barrier for you to getting into STEM or understanding your place within it, and how you can kind of maneuver that field. So one thing that the NOC in Qatar has been doing in this last quarter, they did an event that was student-led, which is a really interesting way to engage with people. I was saying that the NOCs, if it's coming from an international institution, it might not mean as much as if it's coming from your neighbor. But certainly when you're talking to your colleagues, your students, your fellow students, that means a lot more than coming from a teacher. So they had a student-led presentations on solar science at an all-girls secondary school, and they reached 800 learners, which was really phenomenal. And they do all of this work to promote women, or particularly girls in science. In Ethiopia, they gave over 300 learners. There were women and girls, boys and girls, women and men in this class, and to get information on pursuing a STEM career. So they were giving them access to understanding how to pursue a career in STEM, and not just kind of giving it to a single group of people. Maybe even not just giving it to the people who are the highest achievers, but also giving opportunities and making sure that people who are maybe not so great at formal education, don't thrive in a classroom setting, but also giving them opportunities to understand how they might fit into the STEM ecosystem. And now I want to talk about support. And I hope you won't mind my STEM pun in the background. But what does support in STEM look like? I think first and foremost, it's all about institutional awareness. It goes back to education and training for people of all ages. And it's not just training for women, it's training for men, and making sure that everybody understands the importance of having a diverse workforce, and the importance of understanding your own biases and seeing where you might be playing into some of the stereotypes, or some of the issues that are happening within your institution. Making sure that your institutions then have equitable policies. So that means, who's being recruited, who's being hired, what are the policies around childcare and family leave. Is there job protection if you do wind up having a child, or raising a child? Or are you at risk for losing your job if you get pregnant and have to take leave for a certain amount of time? Of course, giving people equitable access to resources, making sure that funding programs target women and girls in STEM, or creating resources that are targeted for a particular group of people. And so these, elements of support are so needed to make sure that people feel like they can succeed in STEM. It's not just about making these policies and having them go away. It's making these policies and backing them up with action within your institutions. And so there's some work that's been done related to this, and I love this picture so much, but this is our NOC in Philippines, who in the last quarter engaged with 26 women and girls. They were learners, they were parents and teachers. They participated in a day-long event that was aimed at empowering young women to participate in STEM. And they gave them the opportunities to kind of understand what that might look like and work within that space. And they all worked on it together. So, it's a kind of almost multi-generational way of understanding how to engage women and girls in STEM. And I also just want to shout out to the Women and Girls in Astronomy program that's run by the Regional Office of Astronomy for Development in North America. They have this incredible funding program that provides funding and mentorship for projects that are aimed at providing opportunities and resources to women and girls in astronomy. And they have a ton of projects that they've funded already that really span a huge range of activities, from empowering Indigenous girls in Mexico to pursue STEM, to inspiring the next generation of role models in Greenland. And so there are these opportunities like these, funding opportunities like these, that are really targeted toward providing support for programs that provide opportunities for women and girls in STEM and astronomy. This is the kind of thing that we really need to push the needle on where we hope to be and where we want to go in the future of STEM, in science communication, and in astronomy. So I want to talk about, we're talking about bias, access, support, representation, but why do we care about all of this? Why is diversity itself so important? And there's been a lot of research that shows that creating diverse environments promotes productivity and creativity. So if you bring in multiple perspectives, multiple ways of thinking, multiple modes of communication, you actually get better ideas. You're better at problem solving, and you're better at innovating. You are not only better, but you're also faster and you're more efficient. So, and then the products that you create are also culturally responsive, which means that they're more relevant in more places than, just in your single environment. So this becomes really relevant on the international scale. When the OAO is building resources and opportunities for hopefully people worldwide, it wouldn't make sense for a single cultural perspective to work around the world. That's unreasonable. That's an unreasonable ask. So having a diverse team of people taking in diverse perspectives to really understand the limitations of our own cultural perspectives, and trying to build projects that are more culturally responsive, that take into account more perspectives. That's a really important thing for our own effectiveness in trying to reach as many people as possible. And this is the same is true for all institutions and all groups. It's not, not just international institutions. There's many different cultures that exist within cultures. So this is always true. It just is very obvious on the international scale. And I also want to point out that, of course, we're talking about gender, and talking about gender in science and astronomy in particular is something that's been kind of like a hot topic for a while. But we all live at the intersection of many different identities. Maybe you're a woman from Ghana who speaks English who, sorry, but has, very different identities that all come together to create who you are. And each person is an individual that sits at their own individual nexus of all of these identities. And so we're all just trying to understand our place within this grand scheme of things. And we're all trying to push against the barriers that our various identities either create or remove for us, and understand the privileges that we have as a result of these identities. So it's a push and a pull that we all have. It's not just gender. The things that I've spoken about don't just apply to gender. They apply to every identity that you could have. And when you're thinking about how can you create safer spaces, you need to think about intersectionality and all of these different identities that you might have, that other people might have. So where do we go from here? And I mentioned this just now, building institutional safe spaces. So who has access to your information? Who has access to your institution? Who has access to opportunities, and who do you invite in? In physical spaces, if you're talking about disability, or if you're thinking about disability, think about structure. Do we have the structures that we need to make sure that everybody who wants to participate can participate? How is information displayed, and what is highlighted? Who is highlighted? You need to understand the demographics of the people that you work with, not just in an outreach or a public engagement setting, but if you're working with in a company and you want to develop a product, you're always thinking about your audience. You're always thinking about who's going to be looking at and interacting with your product. And the outward facing actions that we have should be reflective of the institutional change that we're encouraging. So we should, essentially what that means is we should be practicing what we preach, and be really authentic about the way that we move forward within these spaces, both in astronomy and also just in general in our daily lives. So I want to end with talking about making science communication more inclusive, because I think this is a really important part of what we hope to do. When we're talking about women and girls in astronomy, ultimately we want to make astronomy and science and STEM more inclusive. And so inclusive science communication means recognizing your own biases, your positions of privileges, all of those intersectional identities that you might have. Where are they, and what do they mean for you? What do they give you, and what do they take away? What barriers exist because of those identities? Understanding how our various identities play into our movements in the world and through STEM, and what we can do to combat the ways that, that maybe the inequitable ways in which our identities position us within the world and within STEM. We want to cultivate a sense of belonging, and that has to do with understanding our own bias, but also with providing representation for example, women and girls in science. We want to develop educational methodologies that's not just formal, that's informal, and public engagement methodologies as well that serve everyone. Again, that's not just thinking about how we can communicate with people of all genders, but we're talking about cultural differences and language differences, things of that nature. And then working with and alongside communities, getting multiple perspectives, bringing in multiple people to address the problems that they face, and co-create opportunities for people instead of creating things for them and hoping that it works within their cultural context. And so I think what I want to end on is just this quote that I love so much: "We must build a world where all children have the opportunity to flourish, not just survive." And I think that this kind of speaks to, the whole point of why we engage with this work, not just working through issues of gender in science, in STEM and astronomy, but in astronomy communication in general. I think so many of us came to this from a perspective of seeing the world as a more holistic place than others might see it, and wanting to share that with the world. So I think I will end there and hopefully take any questions that people have, both online and in Zoom.
So much, Kelly, for the amazing presentation. It was really very interesting, and I really loved your slide about the slide was about religion, ethnicity, gender. That's something I agree with. And that's the best part, in fact, of being from different gender, from different religion, from different country, from different nation, from different language. It's like a piece of mosaic, you know. If we do have all the same color, that's boring. So those diversities in different things, I mean, religion, country, nation, language, beliefs, whatever, how we dress, how we talk, how we eat, those are the pieces of the mosaic that they create the beauty of the world. So I really love that slide about how you could be, I don't know, someone, for example, from North Africa, South Africa, but they speak language. It's just not basically literally belong to your nation. How you could be, for example, I don't know, for example, sometime I go to the conference and some people they think that, are you Indian? I was like, I wish I'm Indian. You should be South American. I was like, "No, I wish I could be South American. I feel like it's for me it's very special and it's very beautiful at the same time because if we all speak the same language, we are all from the same nation, we have all the same belief, at certain point is really boring. So last point, yeah, I mean, those are the little color of the life in which they make the life much more beautiful. It's like a mosaic. Each piece of the mosaic, it has its own importance and has its own spot. Without that piece, the mosaic will not be completed. So I really thank you so much, Kelly, for the nice presentation, and we can just go straight and to collect the question. So we have Najah Al Sahili here. She said, yeah, thank you. And for example, active engagement and positive collaboration, everyone getting to you. We have also Lena. So I might start with the people in the Zoom here if they would like to ask question directly to Kelly before we go to the social media question. So if anyone here in the Zoom would like to ask a question to Kelly, please go ahead. All right, so probably probably no one have a question. I'm gonna start with the first one, which we had from the social media, which is about so what were some significant challenge you faced as a woman in science and in academy?
Oh, we don't have enough time for that.
I know
I,
it's very tricky. I have a
uh,
lot to say if I'm yours, but just it's
yeah.
for you.
Well, so for uh, just to give one kind of general example, I think in grad school I had some very tough time with someone that I worked with, um, who did not think that I should be getting a PhD, and did not think that I was good enough to be there. And it was very difficult for me because he not only said that to me directly, but also to everyone in the department, including the men who were my colleagues who were working with him as well. And so they, I think this is why I really stress educating both men and women and everybody about the importance of diversity in the workforce in any context, is because if you're being educated by someone who has these biases, you will inherit those biases. So the person who my colleague who was working alongside me on these projects was, and when we first met, he was great. We had a great time. We worked together perfectly fine. And then, he slowly started to get soured by this this scientist who we were both working with. And then, a few years later, my colleague contacted me separately and said, I really do realize how much I had been influenced by his behavior and his perspectives, and how much they really like colored the way that I saw you. And that I really appreciated that he, came to this realization on his own, um, and had the courage to apologize for it. I think that's a really important thing that we should applaud. But it was a learning experience for me, certainly, to stand up for myself and understand my worth and my intelligence.
It's very interesting, Kelly, because I had also something similar, and it was during my PhD. And it was writing as well. So it was like I'm North African. I'm not good as European people. I come from third level country, in which people are not civilized because I think we live in desert in Africa. So we have no houses, we have no university. We live in the desert, so we're not civilized. We come from desert. It was very rude, and he could be fired for that. But I decided no, I don't want to be as terrible as him. So I was like, because that the university entered in the middle, and they wanted to protect international student because it's international university, and it was right in the PhD evaluation form that I came from Tunisia is not as good as and people there is not as good or they are not as white as European people. So it was terribly bad. So and I was treated really very bad. I mean, I know what you feel because I had something very similar. Because this person his mind that I came from third world country, even if that country have higher education quality compared to his country, however, we still, yeah, we are not very rich country, but the quality education is definitely far away from what I had with him. And if I was not good enough, I would not teach at the same university where he was teaching without any contact. I mean, I applied for a course, no one know me, and I was anonym, and I got accepted. So, and they do not know even my name, and I have no recommendation from anyone. So it was really very bad. At a certain point, I felt, and I'm a woman. So he wrote even that. He was like, yeah, women are not as productive as male. They need to stay at home like a couple of days per week. They feel tired. They are slow. I was like, what? In which, definitely I was not. Sometime he gave me his own email and I worked 24/7 for him because he didn't finish the job that he must finish as a professor at the university. And I was like, yeah, all right, I completely understand. I can help on that. If you cannot, I will do it for you. I know you have a lot of research projects in mind. You are fully charged, so I have no problem. Just give me some time to come back home and I will do that for you. I was trying to help somehow, so at a certain point, he was taking advantage of that. I do remember the last year of my PhD, I was working 1 year free without any payment. So I was forced to go to work in the restaurant 12 hours per day. After the 12 hours per day, I need to come back home and work in my PhD because he didn't pay me for 1 year. I was like slave. I mean, he burned me out. I was burning out literally, and I was not paid for that for 1 year. So I need to go work in a restaurant to finance my PhD, to pay the university, to pay my residence, to pay my house, to pay this and that. And I know that at the end of the day, after the 12-hour work in the restaurant, I have a PhD at home waiting to write it down. So I'm gonna say it was one of the terrible experiences in my life. At a certain point, I regret doing PhD. I'm gonna say my supervisor, my master and bachelor supervisor, she was a woman. She was very determined. I'm gonna say she's a person who make me the person who I am today. So if I'm grateful for something, definitely I'm grateful for her. She's very hard, but she's a very determined person. So however, how I was also at a certain point lucky because after my PhD, I got to know the good people. So I lost the trust in everyone after that. But slowly with time, I get to know much more about good people and start having confidence again to go back to research and write my paper and move on with my career because I left that place and it didn't take me long, fortunately, to adapt slowly to academy, to the university, and to come back to normal person in research. I was completely broke because at a certain point I lost my trust. I was like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe the research is not for me. Maybe I need to do something else in my life. I mean, I need to find another job. I cannot be professor one day at university. So I'm gonna say, yeah, it was really bad experience. And I know that you are not, and I'm not the only woman facing that. It's a lot. Since there are no gender balance, since we are talking about underrepresented female inside university and research, there are not equal opportunity for women and nowadays, and this also including in very developed country, the problem is still there. We cannot hide it. We cannot pretend that it's not there. It's there, and we definitely need to fix that because it's not like 1 or 2 years problem. It's centuries. It's problem that will really go for many years, and it will definitely affect the next generation. I see that Selma is raising hand. Selma, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Uh,
Mhm.
do you
Hi,
hear me?
Selma. Yeah,
Uh,
we do.
Hi, thank you very much, Mayssa, for organizing this, and Kelly also. And congratulations for the talk. It was very inspiring and interesting. Just I have one question, and I would like to know, and I would like to you, to Kelly, to share, if possible, some keys or some ways to do communication in science for your experiences and how to make accessible science and astronomy to people who is not in the field.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the trick, isn't it? uh, yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's there are lots of like best practices that people have written about a ton. Actually, so I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but we have the Office for Astronomy Outreach publishes a journal and communicating astronomy with the public that has a lot of information about all of this. So if you're interested in learning more, we cover topics of, how to best communicate with non-expert audiences, how to, make your materials more inclusive. A lot of it talks about uh, inclusivity and accessibility around people in the blind and visually impaired community and how we can engage them with astronomy, especially because astronomy is such a visual field. And so much of the time, the way that we get people interested in astronomy is by showing them these incredible pictures. And, they get so inspired by what they're seeing that they want to learn more. But if you're, from the blind or visually impaired community, it's hard, it's almost impossible for you to do that. So there are various different ways that you can communicate astronomy. Make it tactile, or write really vivid descriptions, and then translate them into multiple languages, so that multiple people can understand. And then not just do a direct translation, but also translate the metaphors that you're using so that they make sense in other cultures. One example that I can think of is one of the visual descriptions that I read said something looked like tires in snow. But if you live somewhere where there's no snow, you have no idea what that looks like. So you have no idea like tangibly what that might be like. So changing language to fit culture is something that I think is really interesting and important. But then also, we talk so much about knowing our audiences, and that is obviously an incredibly important thing to do. But I think the best way to get to know your audience and to understand how to best communicate with them is by talking to them and seeing what they need, what resources they need, what they need access to, what they're looking for, and how they want that information delivered to them. In Japan, for example, giving a lecture is a very, very common way of relaying information in like an outreach public engagement context. But in the United States, that would put everybody to sleep. Puts me to sleep. So, doing more hands-on things in certain cultures is a really important thing, whereas doing, lectures is more important in other cultures. So, yeah, I think understanding your audience on a really personal level is very important, which obviously on an international scale is kind of difficult, but that's why we have the National Outreach Coordinators. So can fill in the blanks there. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry. I think I went on a tangent.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It is clear. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Selma. We had a question from our follower in social media. She said, "What are some practical strategy for fostering empowerment and inclusivity in education?" That's a good one.
Be a good person. This is such a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, also sensitizing people, because I think also part of the problem is the male itself, because I mean, they are at a certain point, you can feel that some male are really scared from male in science and education, or they are, I'm gonna say, they do not have self-confidence in that. So that might be part of the issue. I mean, seeing undetermined woman, so I mean, she have a lot to do in life, so that might affect the internal confidence of certain male. I mean, part of the problem that male also should know that at certain point we are part of the ocean. They cannot definitely exclude the role of women in science and in education. So I think part of the problem is that men also should understand the real role of women in the society. We are part of the world, so they cannot hide that. I don't know if you might have something to add, Kelly.
I think, well, I agree. I do also think, we should, just as men should be aware of their, lumping everybody into a single category, we should also be aware of those stereotypes that we're dumping into conversations. But yes, I completely agree with you. I like this idea of, we're all part of the ocean. We're all part of the same system that's working together to try and move things forward. And, we might have different ideas about what that means, but, we all can come to the same conclusion that we just want the world to be a better place. And I think that's a good place to start. But I think, in terms of like a practical thing that you can do to improve inclusive, or to make science communication more inclusive, one thing is mentoring. I think is one of the most important things that we can do to improve, like what you were saying, Mayssa, the like self-efficacy, and making people believe that they can do what they want to do. I think that's a really like fundamental thing. If you are at an institution, starting those conversations within your institution is super important. When I was working at the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard, we started a social justice journal club. It was an equity inclusion journal club, but which is basically all about social justice. But it was really, really fascinating. We were reading scholarly articles in equity and inclusion, and then discussing them as an institution. And it wasn't just grad students that showed up; it was actually professors that came as well. And that kind of thing changes the attitude of the institutions, changes the perceptions that the people inside that institution have. And I think, if if you're talking about changing the culture in a larger scale way, you know, I'm of two minds about this, right? Because there's so much work that needs to be done on an institutional level. So top down is really important, but also you need to have buy-in from people from the bottom. So you need to kind of do this dual perspective of bringing in, you know, top-down perspectives, but then also bottom-up grassroots perspectives as well. So yeah, but I think, you know, mentoring and conversation are probably two of the most important things that you can do to move the needle on any of this.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I have a question for you. So it said, what are the most valuable lessons you have learned from the bad experience you mentioned?
Uh, I think just what I said at the end, that I am stronger than any one person, and that I can do a lot more than people think I can, and only I know what I'm capable of.
I agree. I agree.
So I became a lot more confident. I also, this seems weird, but so he's actually, that scientist is actually the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I had such a terrible time working with that person and experiencing the aftermath of working with him that I decided that I did not want to pursue academia, and that I would much rather be embedded within education and public engagement, because that's where I found my purpose. My purpose is to do this work. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have figured that out. I would still probably be doing the postdoc round and trying desperately to figure out what I'm doing with my life.
You're gonna be destroyed mentally, physically, because those people, they're gonna destroy you through time, especially mentally. I mean, like, you will do postdoc, you might end up be adjunct professor or whatever, but you're gonna be mentally destroyed. I mean, you're gonna lose your confidence and you will always remain in that closed circle. I'm good enough. I'm capable enough. So those are the same question. They're gonna keep going in your mind. Definitely. I mean, those kind of experiences. It's hard, but we have like quotes say, "What does not kill you, it makes you strong." So, I mean, that's the correct thing to describe it. I had something similar with my PhD when I ended my PhD. Imagine that someone is defending his PhD without supervisors. So I was alone in my PhD from my part, and I have the community on the other side. And I was defending my PhD alone without a supervisor because that was my choice. I was like, I'm not gonna see him anymore in my life. Um, I got my PhD and I had another postdoc immediately in another place. Um, I mean, when I finished my PhD, I was completely destroyed economically because I was not paid for that. Mentally, I was completely destroyed because in my mind, I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm coming from third world country. I'm coming in a country not as good as in Europe. Um, I'm coming from another country which our students they do not have the same educational level, which is not true because I mean I can see the difference. If I'm not good enough, I will not be accepted for a postdoc without any recommendation, without knowing the university, the people. I just was applying randomly and being adjunct professor in also in Maryland University. So I think you did great by switching to another place, leaving those people in which they do not add anything in life, just okay, reminding you are a woman, you are incapable enough. You will work more than 30 days per week because you're gonna have your period, so you might be in pain or suffering at certain point, so you cannot have leave, you must work. So I mean those are really bad. But yeah, I believe that those kind of experiences is something that the life teach you. You will not have a lesson in university how to be strong woman. No, it does not exist. That's what the life will teach you. Those are really bad experiences in which I hope not all people in the world face that. But I'm gonna say what does not kill you make you much more stronger. I mean, if you compare me, I'm not the same person of 2018 or 19. I'm not the same person. I feel that today I'm an unstoppable, literally. I mean that he thought that I'm not in academy, I'm not good professor, I will never end up my life in academy. I'm not capable to write research paper or whatever he thought about. Today I'm doing my third postdoc in what I wanted to do, aerospace. Today I'm teaching at Maryland University, in which he thought that I would never be a professor. Today I'm doing also outreach to sensitize people about how science and women in science is really presence is really important because as I said, we are part of the ocean, so they cannot exclude that. We have one question for you, Kelly, from Mehdi Saadi from Morocco. He said, what advice would you like to give to science communication working with girls in angle and rural environments? That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great questions. So, of course, if you're working with multilingual environments, you should have people who speak all of the languages that the girls speak, and then make sure that all of on your team, that is, and make sure that all of the resources that you have are translated into their languages, so that they can understand and that they're never left behind. In terms of rural environments, I think that's like its own its own very tricky thing. In urban settings or suburban even, there's often like an overabundance of opportunities and activities that are happening at any given point, either at a science center, planetarium, or library or school or something like that. But in rural environments, it's really not the case. And they really rely on people, either coming to their school or coming to a local community center or something like that, and engaging with them there, in their own area. So I think having, a community liaison is really important. So somebody who, in that community who can, give you information about what needs to be done. I'm sorry, I'm answering your question assuming that you're going into those communities. If you're already part of that community, then this doesn't really apply to you. But if you're outside of the community trying to go in, having a community liaison is definitely something that you need. Somebody to let you know what people in that community need, like we're talking about before with like co-creation and collaboration and all of that. But also make sure that you don't just do one event and then leave, because they need access to more than just one event. And if you want to make a difference in that community, I think it needs to be an ongoing series of events that you bring to that community, and you make sure that they have access and opportunities to resources that they otherwise wouldn't. But if you're part of those rural environments, and you want to gain resources to bring back into the community, I think that's a very different and very difficult question for me to answer, particularly without having any of that experience myself. So I hope it answers your question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kelly. We have another question from Asna. She said, what change would you like to see in women representation in leadership over the next decade?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know what success looks like. More representation, maybe, but maybe having. So the two women that I showed at the front of my talk, having their names be part of daily conversation. Not just Einstein, not just Galileo, not just Carl Sagan, but have women scientists, women science communicators be at the forefront of conversation about who is a good scientist, and have them be the default. I think that would be that's my measure for success. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kelly, because when people think about astronomer, first name to come in my mind, Newton, Galileo, uh, Giuseppe Colombo. So, which all of them are males. So, I mean, including me. That's what I have been. That's what basically teaching me in the school. So, if I think about scientists in astronomy, Galileo, Newton, Tesla, Giuseppe Colombo, which are all of them male, a female, yeah, male, not female. So that's the point, that that's what society teaches us, excluding women in sciences. I mean, there are a lot of scientists are women, not only in space, but in chemistry, in physics, in math, in all the sciences. But no one gonna talk about that, which is really sad. So Dr. Najah, she said, your advice, Doctor, help us remain steadfast in the face of many objections we encounter while pursuing our passion of astrophotography. I definitely agree. I definitely agree. I mean, let me share a personal experience. When I have been in Tunisia, I usually do astrophotography training for students. I'm not really coming from very, very conservative family, but still this society restriction, where to go, how much you're gonna stay there in that place, etc. So usually every summer I take students to astrophotography training in the south of Tunisia because of the good quality of the sky. I mean, I do remember I have a couple of discussion with my mom. She told me, "Are you normal?" I was like, "No, I'm not definitely normal." She told me, "You are a girl alone. Like, do you think that you are male to do that? You cannot pick up 15 students with you and go alone in the desert, in the middle of nowhere and doing a photography. You are a girl. I mean, you don't you feel scary?" I was like, "And what does that even mean?" A girl is a boy, so what's the difference? I mean, I can protect myself if something happening or if some animals passing by because it was in the middle of nowhere. So we usually go to this astrophotography training every summer. I take my students and we go to the south for training in astrophotography to support students how to set up telescope, how to do astro imaging, etc. So we have always this aspect that you remember that always you are a girl, so you might be in danger. I mean, like, yeah, that's true, as also my brother, he could be in danger. So, I mean, there are no difference. I could be in danger as you as well could be in danger. There are no problem that I need extra protection because I'm only girl. So definitely I was not that person. So I come back home 4 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning after a full night without sleep of astrophotography because we were really interesting to have good images of the Milky Way in which we really can see good in the south. So I mean, even being not really conservative, there's always this society cover in which keep in mind that you are always a girl, even if you know karate, even if you know how to fight. You are always a girl, so keep that in mind, which is something I really don't like. I mean, a danger can happen to anyone, anywhere, not in a specific place or related to a certain gender. So another question from our amateur astronomer Giovanni here in Italy. He said, "What advice would you like to give to the next generation of women leaders?"
Hmm. I think the best advice I could give anybody is to find your community. Find the group of people that will, I said this in the Zoom chat, but the people on Facebook can't hear it, so or can't see it. I said, find a group of people that will remind you how brilliant you are. I think that's just so important. I mean, for anybody, but for women in particular, I think having this network of support helps us thrive in a world that is often designed to make us feel small. Having people that will build us up is so, so, so important. So I think for not necessarily just women leaders, but just for the next generation of women who are interested in doing something that people say they shouldn't do, find your people, find your community, and they'll help you do it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, founding community means founding support around. That's very important because you will never feel alone. So you have always people thinking in the same way you think. You have always a shoulder in which you can relate if you are tired from fighting for your freedom or moving forward with your objective. Definitely. So I'm gonna open here a parenthesis about and that's personal perspective. So, how do you see, Kelly, since you are outside of the box, how do you see the situation of female in Arabic country? I mean, in the Arabic community. What is your perspective for that? Because I mean, those are the Arabic country usually have certain restriction. We still have not enough freedom, certain point for women to to I mean to pursue their career in academy, to be professor, and we still struggle more than other continent in terms of gender balance, especially in university and in academia. So, what is your perspective, and especially also some South African country in which women are definitely not represented as good as they should be inside academia university? I mean, it made me sometimes sad that I was in my PhD, I was the only female in the office. All my colleagues were male, which really bad. And this is in a European country. I mean, when I enter my office, I'm the only female there because in the majority of the people mind, aerospace is male science. Women, they cannot study aerospace. They cannot do a lot of math, a lot of physics, a lot of measurement and programming and coding. So, what is your perspective? I mean, it's still a problem in other countries. So, in other African, including my country as well, or South African, and also some Arabic word in the Middle East or in the other part of the continent, some countries they really still have serious problem with the female presence. So, what is your perspective for the future for those girls and women?
That's really tricky. For a number of reasons. One that it's interesting that you ask me as someone who's not in that community. I don't know that I'm the best person to speak about that, but I will say what's interesting for me often when I'm talking to people that I know back in the United States, they have a really skewed perception of women in Arabic-speaking countries that I don't think is represented or representative of the the not only what women have access to, but also the breadth of really brilliant and incredible women that I've met who are from Arabic-speaking countries. And I think that perception is really something that's hard for people to get past. They have, especially in the United States, which is where I'm from. So that's the context that I can speak to the most. The perception is really driven a lot by media, and media is not kind.
It's
So
not. Definitely, it's not.
no,
It's
and
like manipulating people to think in certain way, which is not
yeah,
good.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
something I
exactly.
really don't like about media, journals, TV. So I think that's one of the solution that could be if you open the TV to watch a documentary, you should see that this woman this doctor she succeeded to figure out medicine for cancer or whatever. This doctor she managed to fix out problem in space mission or whatever. You will never see that. They will
Yeah,
never highlight the role of women in their own society and their own nation, and that's very bad.
yeah, yeah, and I, especially from working with the NOCs, the National Outreach Coordinators, there's so much work that people do to specifically target girls in schools to get them interested in astronomy and educate them in astronomy. I feel like especially in these countries, because they see it as kind of like a societal imperative to push whatever they think that push the needle in whatever direction that they think it needs to go. And I showed a couple examples. One of them was Qatar, working with 800 girls, which I think that's really incredible. And I was looking through other examples of NOC's work when I was preparing for this talk. And there's so many people that do so many things in the Arab world. And I think that's kind of like the future of it, right? Is just expanding that and getting eyes on that, making sure people know about the work that's being done and the progress that's being made, and the hope that exists within those communities. I mean, I think, so much of it is about changing perceptions, not just like outside, but also inside, right? So I don't know, but I want to turn that question around back at you, because I feel like you have so much to say about that, and so much better informed than me.
Yeah, I mean, we are working that. Fortunately, in Tunisia, we really don't. We have a very strong, determined woman, so they're definitely working that, and we're working that together. So, it's gonna take time. Things that cannot be done in 1 or 2 years. So it's long-term process, but definitely, one of the things we really focus working with the students, especially kids, is that everyone have the same opportunity, whatever their gender is, and this including underrepresented community. So science opportunity should be equal to everyone, whatever their belief, whatever their gender, whatever their nation, whatever their color. So equality should be for everyone. And we are really serious about that. I mean that we are promoting project, including also we have certain policies, like this is the policy, you cannot do this, you can do that. And we are required to give definitely the same opportunity for everyone. And we're working that, but we're not expecting that a change will be done in one day. It's long-term procedure, so definitely something will absolutely take time. So, all right, I'm gonna see here if someone have something to add in the Zoom chat. I don't know if someone would like to jump in and maybe add something before we close the meeting. All right, so probably no one will have anything to add. So I think we are in the end of the meeting. I would like to thank again Kelly Blumenthal, the head of the IAU Office for Astronomy of Outreach, for being here with us today to talk about women and girls in astronomy and answer the Q&A question from our followers. It was really very nice to have you here with us today. So we have one last minute comment from Najah. She said, if there is no objection, may we take a group photo for this gathering? Definitely we can. So yeah, definitely we can do that. So if you agree to turn on your camera, and definitely we can have a group photo for all of us together. For those we feel comfortable, just please turn on your camera. We can have photo. For those that don't feel comfortable with that, there are no problem. So we can just we can just keep their camera off. All right. So 1, 2, 3. Another
I think Kelly
photo.
should stop sharing. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Stop sharing. Okay. So 1, 2. All right. So I had a couple of screenshot. I will send it to you. All
Thank
right.
you for inviting me to this. This was really lovely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly, for your time. Thank you, everyone, Najeh, Naomi, and everyone have been here today with us. Selma as well. It was so nice to see you here again. It have been a very long time. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Thank you for your time, for the discussion, for the Q&A. I really appreciate your time, your contribution. And yeah, we might see you again in another meeting. Thank you, everyone, and have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Have a good day.